This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap again, and then let's go ahead and get started today. So yesterday I was talking about branch policies and also branching and merging strategies. Again, I'm just establishing the basics of branching and merging strategy. I have not gone inside what is actual, and then I've not really explained or expanded that. We'll look at that as and when the classes progress. But there's one more thing that I wanted to, let's say, talk about today before I move ahead with the concept. There is something called as a merge conflict that you frequently keep hearing. Merge conflicts. What exactly is a merge conflict? Why do you get a merge conflict? Is this? See, in a repository, now we're talking about an Azure repository today. You have, let's say, one default branch. I'm telling in my repository, there is a default branch called development branch. And all the developers, let's say developer one, two, three, whoever it is, let's say developer one, two, three, whoever is a developer, whoever is a DevOps engineer who's working in an organization, they will have to use a feature, sorry, they will have to use a feature branch and then merge their code into the develop branch using a feature. So they are going to use a feature branch. Using this particular feature branch, we will go ahead and let's say merge the code into the develop branch using a pull request. Yes, a pull request, and that particular pull request basically will need approvals and all that stuff. Now imagine here I'm just giving you one simple file called readme file. This is the file basically that we are basically trying to, let's say, use as an example, then try to establish multiple things or do multiple things out here as such. Imagine that I am a developer one. I made a copy of this particular, let's say, readme file, and I'm working on, let's say, my code. Also, developer 2, sorry, developer 2 also cloned it into his machine. So there is one more developer called developer 2. He also cloned it into his machine, and he's also working on the same code, or he's also working on the same file. Now imagine that this developer is adding line 1. This developer doesn't know that this developer is working on the same line. He's editing the same line in this file. He can edit because he is editing on a local copy. That is very important. He's editing, let's say, on a local copy out here. Very important. Now, if they go ahead, for example, if this particular developer goes ahead and changes this line, let's do that. So if I come down into dev.azure.com, what I'll do is I'll first go into my repository, and this is the develop branch of my repository. I'll just close this out, and in my develop branch, I have something like this is sample commit, something like that. I'll firstly make a clone. I'll again make a clone today. So I'll say clone. Again, I already have this inside my local machine, but to make sure that I have a fresh copy, I'll re-clone this out. I'll say clone this out in VS Code. I'll say yes open. I'll just clone this out once again. So again, I'll just say select repository location. I'll just go ahead use my junk folder out here. I'll just say select repository. I'll open this out. So I'm re-cloning it out just to make sure that I have a fresh copy. And this is called as Android 2. It's okay with me. And if you check this out, this is telling it is the sample code. I'm working on the develop branch. Now I'll create two different branches as two different developers on two different machines. Let's imagine that because I do not have a second machine, so I'm not doing it on a second machine. I'll say click on this, create a branch from, and I'll say feature branch developer one. So feature developer one, I'll say enter from the develop branch. So there's a feature developer one branch, and also there is a new branch. I'll say new branch out here. and say feature developer 2 from the developer branch again. So two developers are working on the same branch, but they don't know they don't know that they're working here out here. Right? So what I'll do is I'll first come here, go into my feature developer one branch, and just below this line, I'll say adding this line as developer one. I'm just giving some, let's say, content here telling this developer one. I'll save this. I will stage the change, give a commit message telling adding line as dev one. I'll I'll say comment all, and I'll say publish branch. Or you can do one more thing out here is that you can firstly go into your develop branch. You can say develop branch out here, and you can click on these three buttons here, and there is something called branch, and I can say merge branch. So I can say, okay, fine. Instead of going to the portal and creating a pull request, I can create a pull request from here also. I'll say merge branch, and I'll say merge branch, which is called feature develop one. I'll say sync changes. I'll say okay. So now what I'm trying to do is that yes, so it's telling okay, fine. You'll have to first pull this out and all that stuff. So it's telling pushes to this branch is not permitted. You need a pull request out here. So I'll go back, refresh the screen out, go into my pull requests, and there isn't one. So I create one here. Firstly, I cannot do that. So I'll just create one. And to create this out, what I'll do firstly, I'll publish my branch. The branch is not yet there. So I'll just go here into my VS Code. I'll say this is develop one branch. I'll publish this branch out here. And as soon as I publish this branch, I'll just refresh the screen. So I have developer one branch into develop. I'm just adding this particular line. That's it. I'm just adding this line, and I'll just say create. So now firstly what it does is that it checks whether the merge conflict is there or not. It's not there. Secondly, this reader called RBSC reader, he has to approve it out. The reason being he's a approver. So what I'll do, I'll just log into the portal by using a different account. Calling it as RBSC reader at the rate gmail.com, and I'll approve my pull request. I'll say no, don't sign in. Don't say sign in out here. And as and when I go, as and when I go in, I will be able to see this particular project, and I will be able to see, let's say, the pull request out there in this particular project is active. This is the file change. I'll say approve this out. Once approved, the developer can come here, complete it, delete the branch after it is done. I'll say yes, complete the merge. Done. So now what developer one did, so what developer one did right now is that he went ahead, added this particular line telling that this is adding line as a developer one. In your local machine, however, so if you look at the develop branch right now, let's say develop branch. So now what I'll do is I'll just make sure that I sync the changes back again. So I'll say sync, I'll say okay. So I'm just making sure that both my cloud and this branch, again, it's telling try to pull the branch firstly. So I'll just go ahead, say, do a right click here, say pull. So I'm just pulling all the changes out here and I am now good. All the changes are in place. This developer one went ahead, added this particular change. Now as a developer two, what I'll do is I'll just say this is a, or I'm adding a different line. This is a different line. I'll say as developer two on a different branch, right? So I'll say save. I'll say stage all these changes. I'll say sample changes. commit these changes, publish my branch once again. As and when I publish the branch again, sorry, on the cloud, you'll be able to see that there's a branch. I'll say create a pull request into the develop branch as a developer too. Say create, and there is one merge conflict. It is telling there is a merge conflict out here. There is something called as a merge conflict because the README file is edited in both. There is already a line. You're trying to override that particular line. Do you really want to override this out? Because you're now running into a conflict out here because developer 1 has added this out. Developer 2 didn't know that. Developer 2 didn't even know that developer 1 has already added this out. He doesn't know that. His branch is very old. What he needs to do right now is just go here. Firstly, change this to, let's say, something like the develop branch, origin developer, whatever it is. Change this out and say branch, merge branch, feature 2. As and when I do that, right, it is telling yes, there is, let's say, a conflict. I'll say open git log. It's telling there is a conflict out here, and do you want to resolve this particular conflict? I'll say yes. Please resolve this conflict in merge editor. As and when I do that, right, it's now telling which change you want. Do you want the change from the left hand side? So here, if you see, it's telling accept all the current changes from the left, or do you want these changes? Because it can either be developer 1 or either be developer 2. One line cannot say both the things out here, right? Either developer 1, either developer 2. Now I'm telling, okay, fine. Let's say I'll take the change from the left because this is the new change, the latest change. I have the approval for that. I'll say accept all the changes from the left. And now I'll say go ahead and let's say stage this out. Yes, I'll say complete merge. I'll say stage this out, comment out. And then I'll go ahead and now go back into my, let's say, overview. I'll just refresh the screen. Again, I'll just sync this out. Let me do one thing. Let me do one pull request once again. So I'll say branch, merge branch, feature develop 2. So now let me go ahead and refresh the screen out. Okay, it's still there. Say yes, okay. So I'm trying to sync the changes back again. Yes, I'll have to pull this out. I'll have to, let's say, do a resolution firstly. So if I look at my branch right now, so it's telling now go ahead and sync the changes back again. But since the branch is locked, what I need to do is that if I go back and firstly go ahead pull the changes firstly, and yes, sync this out. So this is something that you're bound to get because your branches, let's say, has policies out here as such. So now what you can do is, let's see, I'll just go ahead and let's say refresh this out. It still has conflicts because this is not getting reflected. Let me do one thing. Let me go ahead and let's see. This is my branch, and let's see what is the branch telling right now. So it's still telling it is dev1, and it is telling dev1. Reason being, sorry, sorry. The reason being, it's telling that that this particular dev1 is there, and I cannot go ahead and update the branch until the policy is there. So the policy will say restrict you to do that. So let me do one thing here. Let me try to, let's say, do a quick pull. And let me also try to do a git sync. Let's say accept pull and pushes. And let's see what is the error message that I'm getting here. Yes, pushes to these branches are not permitted because you have to use a pull request here. So let's create a pull request. Let's say changes stage, all changes, that is fine. Let's do one quick thing. Branch, let's say merge the branch from developer to so origin develop, and let's merge this out. Yes, it's trying to merge out, but the problem is that it's not able to create the pull request out here. I'll check that out on why the pull request is not getting created. But Normally, let's say completed and this is developer one, this is sample commit. Normally this pull request needs to get updated. Not sure why isn't it getting updated out here. Let me give it a second. And let's check this out. Let's change this out to, let's say, develop, and let's do a pull request once again. Let's try to see if that's getting updated. Yes, it still basically has the old one in memory. So just give me some time because this one has the policy. That's the reason it's not getting synced out. So sometimes in order to, let's say, allow this to sync back again so that your pull request can go in, we remove the policy for some time. We just go ahead, remove the policy for some time. So all you need to do is switch this off and properly delete this out. And you can put the policy back again once you let's say pull request or once the resolution is, let's say, completed. So once if I see this, now I do not have a policy, I'll sync my changes back again. So once the changes are synced, it's telling this is the line 2, the changes are synced out here, then I can put my policy back in, telling that please go ahead put this policy in here. And if I now look at the branch and if I now look at the pull request right now it says all the changes in the pull request are already merged to the target branch out here. So you can go ahead from your local machine, just unblock the policy for some time and then go ahead and, let's say, put this in, then this will get updated. Or the developer can go ahead and, let's say, make the change according to, let's say, what is there in the branch currently, and then he'll be able to, let's say, go ahead then he'll be able to, let's say, go ahead and get the changes done out here as such. So very importantly, these merge conflicts that you see, right, they will happen at a regular time period, because there might be multiple developers who are working on the code, there might be multiple people who are working on the code out here as such. So there might be multiple developers who are doing that. So that's the reason you will or you are bound to, let's say, get these particular, let's say, issues. So that's the reason every time the recommendation for a developer is that please create new branches, don't use old branches. And that's the reason after the pull request is completed, we delete the branch. We go ahead and delete the branch out here so that new branches can be created out of it as such. But again, resolving this particular merge conflict is not our duty. As a DevOps engineer, this is not your duty, but you just need to understand what is a workflow of just going ahead and, let's say, resolving a merge conflict out here, for which you have to resolve the merge conflict from your local machine out here as such. Yes, any questions here? Anyone, any questions that I can take to you? Anyone,
So
any questions that I can? Huh?
why we have to delete the branches? And suppose on the same day, if two, three developers are doing a merge on this README, but
Mhm,
like that same code,
mhm.
what will happen?
You
Uh,
will do a merge conflict. Very simple. You are going to get into a merge conflict if two, three developers are doing the same code, same line, they're editing the same line out here. You are simply going to get a merge conflict out here. The developers will resolve the merge conflict and then go ahead and create a pull request out here.
in the as a developer one, you added some data to the README file and you uploaded it. And
Mhm.
like developer 2, it is showing as a merge conflicts. Normally merge conflicts will show prior to the prior to the approvals.
Merge conflict will show prior to the approval. If you have a merge conflict, you cannot even approve it. Or even though if you approve it, the change will not get merged. So merge conflict will show up as and when you create a pull request. As and when you create a pull request, the merge conflict will show up out here as such.
If developer 2 will clone this before merging, if developer 2 will clone this and if he add his content to that file,
Mhm.
there won't be any merge conflict.
Yes.
If there is a data variance between these two branches, then only it will show.
Branches only, then it will show up. Yes. Yes. Any more questions, guys?
Kiran, actually,
Hmm.
developer one has written a line with the name like this is from developer one,
Hmm.
and developer two has given another name like from as dev two. Both of these lines are different. No, then why match conflict is coming?
Because you're editing the same line. You're editing the same line called 923 on your file, and you're
Okay,
trying to tell that okay, fine, change the file. Now your Git is telling okay, fine, you know what? There's already a name there. There's already a line there, and
okay,
it's already
okay.
been edited. So now tell me, do you want to take this line, or do you want me to take the before line out here as such?
Okay. So at the same time, only one line can be committed, right? Sync or whatever.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, please?
If both the developers are syncing that as a code at the same time, and if both are confident on that, how the in the real time how the merge conflicts will be resolved? Like
In
who
the
will
real time, the developers have to, let's say, firstly talk to each other. That's where team integration comes into picture. The developers have to talk to each other. If they are, let's say, working in a same time zone, in the same time they're getting a conflict, either one has to tell okay, which is the right code. So the developers have to talk to each other and tell okay, fine, let me go ahead, put in my pull request, you can cancel your pull request and something like that. That's how the conflicts are resolved.
and also if there is a possibility after doing like on if there are, both are new one after committing developer one changes, then the developer two can commit later, right? By
Developer
closing.
2 can, before committing, very importantly, developer 2 has again have to, because see, one thing what will happen is that whenever developer 2 is working, for example, let's say this is developer 1 branch. So I'm going ahead and telling, okay, fine, I'll put a developer 1 branch out here. Developer 1 branch altogether has a different code. The develop branch has been updated right now. He has to make sure that he updates his branch here. Firstly, he has to make sure he updates his branch. So what he needs to do is that there is an option here called rebase branch. Go ahead, rebase this out, meaning go ahead, let's say, make sure that please rebase this out onto, okay, this is select branch to rebase onto. Yes, it is develop branch. And as and when I do that, right, do you see my code has got updated? So whatever is now there in the develop branch is now getting reflected, and now I can go ahead and make my changes. Now my branch is up to date. Now I can go ahead and make my changes. Now I won't get any, let's say, much conflict issues out here as such.
So can these branch policies are built in, or do we have a custom branch policies as well in that?
Do we have a custom branch policy? When you say you want a custom branch policy, what exactly do we want to do out here?
Branch policies, custom branch policies means apart from the built-in, if any specific to the project or specific to the
Yes.
customer.
Right, but can you give me an example on what specifically that you want to do out here? Because here you have the required number of reviewers, you have work item linking, you have comment resolution, merge types, you have build validation, and all these things out here. So when you say you need a custom branch policy, can you just give me an example of what exactly we want to achieve so that I can go ahead and give you an example?
At this point of time, we are not, but I just wanted to
Hmm.
know that is there a custom policies?
Yes,
Can be
there can be custom policies. When I say custom policies out here, very importantly, there is something called build validation where I can add something like a PowerShell script and let's say validate, or do some validations, additional validations out here. You can customize this, yes.
Kiran, one last question. Like
Mhm.
this merging problem is only for the developers only, no? So they can
Uh,
log in into the DevOps account and they can resolve this. So what is the DevOps engineer role in this case?
DevOps engineer's role here, in a merge conflict, there is nothing,
Mhm.
because here
Okay.
it has to be, let's say, it's a developer's area. They will have to resolve this out. But
Okay.
you as a DevOps engineer also, right?
Mhm.
In the future, you might also go ahead and, let's say, store your PowerShell scripts, store your
Okay.
ARM templates. And if the
Mm.
DevOps team is too big, I'm editing a template, the other sorry, the other DevOps engineer is also editing a template. We will go into a merge conflict. So that's where I can go ahead and, let's say, do a rebase, talk to the DevOps engineer, and then
Mm.
go ahead and resolve the merge conflict out here.
Oh,
In a
thanks.
developer's repository, we don't do that. In a developer's repository, we don't, let's say, resolve those merge conflicts out here. They will have to resolve their own merge conflicts out here as such.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes, any more questions, guys? Sorry. Okay, so
Then
let's
one
see. We'll
last
take.
question. One,
Good,
one
please.
last. Yeah. When I created this repository on the first day,
Hmm.
it asked for the email address and the name of the repository from the Git.
Yes.
So it has given a error there, asking for please mention your email address and the name. So,
Hmm.
like if I have given my email address and the name, then what is the use? Like whatever I have making the changes, it will save in the Git of the local machine.
Okay. Yes, it will save in your local machine. Yes, that's one thing that is the advantage of. Let's see. For example, let's say I do a commit here, right? So in my local machine, my name is called Azure DevOps. I'll say this is a test. I'll commit this out. And
Okay.
if I go ahead use a terminal, that's a new terminal out here. I can do a bash instead of PowerShell. I can say, so instead of PowerShell, okay, instead of PowerShell, I can do a git bash terminal, and I can say git history. Okay, let's see. Git hyphen help. Git branch. Let's say history. I think. So what it does is that when you say git branch history, let's see. There is a command called git branch and hyphen help here. For some reason,
Mm.
fine. So what it, okay, git branch, okay, git help, git, okay, fine, no problem. Let's see, git branch history. Let's see the command for the same thing. So what it does is that it will give you a history of your entire local commit. So git branch history. So let's say git show branch, git log. Okay, great. So this is what it tells you, that the author is your name, which is the
Mm.
name that you've given in your local machine,
Mm.
and your email ID, what has been done, what is the commit number on the local machine, and what is the origin branch, what is your current branch, and couple of things out here. So it goes ahead and gives you all those things out here as such, all your history. It goes ahead and, let's say, logs it out under your name. And if you see, this is a different author, classes Azure DevOps, because this came from my Azure DevOps account. When you say Azure DevOps out here, this is my local Git account out here as such. So it will tell you who made these changes and how they made these changes in the form of a log out here as such.
But more or less, that dev.azure.com, that account also will show the same history. Hello.
Can you come again? Yeah,
Yeah.
can you come again your question, please?
Yes. Like what we are seeing now, the Git history, more or less, here also we can see the same changes. No.
Right, it you can, but can you
Yeah.
tell me who made that change?
Okay. Okay.
This is Azure DevOps. It's a local change. It can be
Okay.
someone else's name. And this is here, see, it's classes Azure DevOps here.
Okay.
So that's the reason why we put a Git username and a Git email address.
Got it.
So yes, Git will allow you to track the history both on the local and also on the remote. so that you can go ahead and work offline with Git. All the changes are also preserved in the Git local repository or in the Git local database as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes, any more questions, guys?
Kiran,
Mhm.
Kiran, under
Good,
main
please.
branch, we can create multiple branches, right?
Mhm.
Everybody is going to work on their own branches.
Yes.
Uh, my question is that everybody is going to work on the same README file. It is a README file, right?
Mhm.
Everybody going to work only one README file, or any different things happen? See,
Again,
if you are saying that
yes.
there's a
Again,
they are writing the same line in the same. I mean, the 20. Yes, just now you written right
okay. Okay.
like that. If they have different README files, means there is no confliction happen, right?
Yes, of course. If they have different README files and if they have different files and different developers are working on different files, then there is no conflict. I'm just generating an ideal scenario where you can run into a conflict so that I can show you how do you resolve the conflict out here. Yes, if there are multiple files, which is yes, which is the case when you work in real time, is that you'll actually have multiple files, not just one. You'll actually have thousands of files out there, and each and every developer might be working on different file. If that is happening, then there will not be any much conflict. You're a developer who's working on a different file. I'm a developer who's working on a different file. Until and unless you don't edit the same file system, you won't run into a conflict. That's the point. Yes, any more questions, guys?
According to you, one repository having only one file, right?
Sorry, one repository is having. Can you come again?
Only one file, or in main number of files?
In a real time, you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
It'll have a number of files. It won't have just one file. It'll have n number of files. Yes, and that's what I want to talk about. Is that until now we are just talking about a README file as an example. But now, as a developer, I want to go ahead and let's say commit my code. Meaning, I have some code as a developer. Let's say that I have written some code out here in my local laptop. I went ahead, wrote some .NET application code. So I let's say designed the code. I'm all done. I now want to go ahead and let's say push this code inside my repository. If I want to push this code inside my repository into this particular branch, sorry, into the develop branch out here, very importantly, guys, I will need to approach this via pull request again. There is no exception because I have a policy out there that is blocking me out. I will have to firstly go ahead and let's say use a pull request. So what I'll do firstly is that let me change the branch to develop. It's called origin develop. Let me change that. So now this particular develop just has one particular file. Before I go ahead and make a change, what I'll do as a developer is that I'll just go ahead and make sure to pull all the latest changes that are there on the branch so that I'm sure that so that I can be sure that I'm using a latest copy of my branch. So I'm pulling all the changes. Now what I'll do is I'll create an actual branch right now. I'll say create a branch. I'll say feature, and now I am committing some actual code into my branch. I'll say Kiran commit code, and I'll say okay fine. I want to create this branch from the develop branch out here. So now what I have is that I now have a branch out here right now. I'll publish this branch. I'll just go ahead, keep this branch published so that I can go ahead and let's say do my changes out here. Now what I'll do is just see this. All these branches are under this particular folder called Android-2. So if you look at this particular folder, I have something called Android-2 out here, under which I have a local Git database which is tracking all my changes. And multiple branches are, let's say, inside this particular Git database, it has all that memory out here as such. Now, what I'm doing is that as a developer, I'm saying I want to write a code. Now, since I'm not a developer, I'm not going ahead and writing a code. If you want, you remember, right? We went into Visual Studio, we did some sample .NET code application out here, right? Instead of that, let's start working on an actual code out here that is available. So what I want you to do is just go to Google, just say random quotes, random space quotes, space .NET. You will get a GitHub repository page. It's a GitHub, just like Azure repos. This is an open source. It's a public project. Just click on this. And here you have all the code that is written by some developer. Some developer wrote some code about 2 years ago. They have written this code some 29 days ago. They've updated and all that stuff. So they keep updating this out. And there are a lot of developers who are contributing this out. This is a sample application. What does this application do? Very simple. When you go and take this code, deploy this code onto a web app, run that particular web app, each and every time you refresh this page, you will get a quote of the day or something like that. You will get some random quote out here as such, and that's the reason the project name is itself called as random quotes. So what I'll do, so I'll firstly say code, and I'll say download as zip. So I just want to download this entire code out here as a zip file, and let's open this out again. Let's go into my download sections of the let's say this one, and I have something called random quotes hyphen master. I'll just extract this out. Now this is a sample code that I'm giving as a developer. Now it is your wish if you want to go ahead and upgrade this code. You want to go ahead open this particular code in your, let's say, Visual Studio. You want to, let's say, add multiple functionality to this code. This is you as a developer that you can take a picture of. I mean, you can, let's say, assume whatever as a developer you want to do, you can do out here. What I'm now doing is that I have the code. I'll just copy this code out here. I'll just copy my entire code. And I also know where my, let's say, branch is cloned, right? It's in the junk folder in the Android 2. This is a README file. What I'll say right now is that I'll add a new folder out here. I'll say code, and whatever that I copied, just paste it here. So whatever that I copied from that particular code, so I downloaded the code, extracted the code. Wherever my repository is there, I went ahead and pasted this code out here. That's it. I just added this out. So now if you check this out, do you see there are about 71 changes that I've made right now? If I click here, it's telling all these are now the changes. All these now are the changes. Are you good to go ahead and commit all them? Again, if you check this out, there is a code. There is a folder called random quotes. This is your actual application, which has something like a CS project file and all these things. Also, if you go into the CS project file, this is developed in .NET 3.1. It's a .NET Core 3.1 in which they have developed this out. And also, you have some test cases that were written. You have some test cases that were written in order to test this code out. And if you see this, there is something called as a test.cs project file, and it is telling that, okay, fine, just go ahead and do some simple test out here to see whether the code is running or not, whether the code is properly built and properly running or not. So you also have a test case. What I'll now do is that this is the entire code folder. I'll stage everything. I'll say everything I'll stage. I'm ready to go ahead and commit it out. So now it's telling all these changes are staged. I'll say actual code push, and I'll say commit, and I'll say sync the changes back again. And where am I committing this code into? This particular branch called feature forward slash Kiran hyphen something like that, right? So I'll commit everything. I'll come here into my branches. I'll just refresh this out. Now it's telling this branch got updated. Feature forward slash Kiran got updated. Do you want to create a pull request? So yes, please create a pull request into the develop branch. I'll say commit this out. No merge conflicts. At least one reviewer should approve this particular code besides the author. So I am the developer, right? If I go ahead and say approve, right? It says approved, but it's telling at least one reviewer besides the author must approve it. You cannot approve your own changes. And I'll say, okay, fine. You know what? Let me reach out to one of my technical leads. I'll say set this auto complete. I'll delete the branch after the merge is done. I'll say delete this out. Once if I go here into that incognito window where I was logged in like a developer. So now if I go here, now there is something called as auto code push. And if I look at the files, I have all these files that I've committed. Every file here got committed out here. I'll say yes, this is all good. Approve this out. So as and when I approve, as an approver, now it's telling, you know what, merging the pull request, and all the files are now inside the develop branch of my repository. Again, I did not do a build. I did not do a publish. I'm not doing all these things on my local machine. I will rather, let's say, just put the code inside here. And this is where your work start, guys. This is where we as a DevOps engineers really come into picture. Until here, it was mostly a developer's game. You as a DevOps engineer till here, these are your responsibilities. Till here, till the developer goes in, comes the code, this is your responsibility, is that you are expected to create repositories. Right? You're expected to create repositories. You're expected to create branches in that particular repository. Branches. You are also expected to protect those branches. When I say protect those branches, I'm talking about branch policies. Merge conflicts in a developer's repository, the developers have to take care of it. They have to resolve this out. And after this, till now, we are only talking about a README file. We did not do anything because we had to understand the basics of Git. Now, we know the basics of Git. Developers has made sure to go ahead and, let's say, take this code, push it into the repository. All the code is now inside the development branch of your repository. Very importantly, the developer is now telling that, okay, fine, all the code that I have given to you, it is a raw code, or this code is written in a high level language. You cannot take this code and directly deploy onto a server or a web app or a virtual machine. You cannot do this. You cannot directly deploy this out. Reason being, this code is in a high level language. In order to deploy, what do I need to do, guys? What do I need to do with this particular code? In order to deploy this code, what do I need to do with this particular code?
We need to build.
I need to build. Exactly. I need to
Architect.
build, which means exactly I need to convert my code. Did we build earlier? Did we do any build operation earlier? Did we? Did we do it? Did we
Yeah.
do a build earlier?
Yes.
Yes. When did we do it? Can anyone recollect? And how did we do it?
I think
How
when
did
we
we
did
do a build? No, we did
in
not use a pipeline till now, right? We never used the pipeline. We Visual
Plus,
Studios.
Studio Code
Yes.
we can use.
Yes, we use Visual Studios. So if you open the same code in Visual Studio, you can simply do a build. But I'm not doing a build right now. So if I use this open, I'll just open this out in a Visual Studio. You have a Visual Studio, and as a part of our app service demos, we did a build and we did a publish. We did a build in order to compile the code into a binary language so that, let's say, the app service can understand. So you have a build here. So if I just click on this and say build, I can go ahead and, let's say, build this application out. But I'm not doing that. As a developer, I'm not doing that. I have developed my code. I've given the code to you. Now it is your headache. As a DevOps engineer, you will have to now create something called as a build pipeline. As a DevOps engineer, you will now have to create something called as a build pipeline out here as such. The duty of this particular build pipeline is to go ahead, take all the code from your repository, which is the develop branch out here, make a build out of it, meaning compile the code and produce something called as an artifacts. This is what is the end goal of a build pipeline. Do something called as an artifacts out here. How will we do that? We'll talk about it. But today, what I want you to do is just read about merge conflicts. Merge conflicts in Git How do we how do we handle merge conflicts? And what I want you to do is very simple. Please go to this particular link, download this entire code. Make sure that the code is inside your Azure repository. Now, one way I did it is that I went ahead, I downloaded this code, unzipped it, then put it inside my folder, committed, raised a pull request. I did all these things. A simpler way to do it is just click on the repository. You say add a create a repository, and you also have what? Import a repository. You can say import, and you can give this entire URL out here. It'll create a repository with the name called random quotes. You can change this to any repository name and say import this out. If you want to do a new repository, if you want to, let's say, put all this code in the existing repository, then simple go ahead, download the entire code out here, push that in, and so on and so forth out here. So now if you see, if I click here to view the code, I have all the repositories, and I also have the history in this particular repository on who's done what. So you see something called Matthew or someone, all these are developers who went ahead and, let's say, updated all these files out here, and they all basically went ahead and, let's say, contributed to this, and all this, let's say, history is compiled out here as such. So the first initial commit, right, happened in the year 2018. Even that history is also committed here. All the history, no matter when it happened, what it happened, all the history will be compiled out here as such. So all the way, this was an initial commit. If you check this out, it will also tell you what happened that back then. If you come back here, right, and go to the history out here, you can look at all the history on what they have been doing out here as such. So I have all the code. I've done it in two ways. One thing is a longer way. I went and downloaded this out, committed into my branch, did all these things, created a pull request, approved that particular pull request. Then the code was inside an existing repository. But if you want to go ahead, create a new repository altogether with all that particular code, you can just copy that link of that particular repository. So this is the link. I'll just say import. And once you click on import, paste, I'll say import this. So that's it. You can go ahead and do that in order to create a new repository out here as such. And in this particular new repository, right, see how many branches you have. All these branches were created by multiple developers out here. All these branches are there, but the main branch here is a master branch. Do you see a default branch out here as such? So if you want something clean, make sure to create your own repository, own branch. And in my case, if you see, I just have a develop branch. All these branches, I can delete this out. And in my develop branch, I have all the code out here as such. And in the later part of my lecture, meaning from tomorrow, I'll start processing this code. I'll start looking at this code as a DevOps engineer, create, build, and release pipelines for this particular code so that it is built, it is already, and it's built, and it's also deployed out here as such. So this is what I would like to do out here as such. Is any questions here, guys?
Normally, we learn somewhere. What is the Git stash and what is slash? Any brief description?
Git stash, I'll cover that. What exactly is that? At this point, it'll become a little, let's say, over the head if I talk about git stash. So there
Okay.
are two commands called git stash and git fetch. I'll talk about these things out here as such.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Any more questions, guys?
Kiran,
Hmm.
the you clone the Git repository by taking URL, right? It's automatically updated in my local machine also, or otherwise I have to pull my code once again.
Can you come again, please?
Uh, you taken the repository by URL, right?
Mhm. Right.
Okay. It's automatically updated in my local machine also.
Not really, because I have created a repository out here. So this is a new repository. In
Hmm.
your local machine, you're working on a repository called Android. You're
Yes.
not working on random codes, right?
Hmm.
If you
So
want this repository also, you have to clone this out. Yes,
okay.
you have to do a clone.
Pull request is not required here, not useful.
Pull request is between branches of a repository, not between repositories. Pull request is between branches. So you are looking at two things. One is a repository. What I did here is that I created a new repository altogether. This repository will have its own branch system, and you can go ahead and let's say create pull requests between the branches of this particular repository. But what we are doing right now is that we just created the entire repository, and if you want the code of this particular repository, you will have to let's say go ahead and clone this out. And if you want to perform any let's say pull requests, you can go ahead use your own branches and do a pull request into the branch of this particular repository out here as such.
Yes, got it, got it.
Yes, any more questions, guys? Anyone, any questions that I can take? All right, so what I want you all to do is just go ahead, try to look at what is merge conflicts. Try to let's say do this demo of creating your own merge conflicts, and let's just see if you're able to resolve them out. That's one thing that I want to do. And second thing, please make sure to get all this code, keep it inside your Azure repository, so that from tomorrow we can go ahead with the build pipeline strategy on what is build pipeline, what is release pipelines, and we'll see a couple of things out here. Okay. Thanks, guys, and have a good day. Thank you.
Okay.
Kiran,
Sorry, go ahead, please.
Kiran, my PowerShell issue is not solved, Kiran.
I will have to take a look at that. Uh, Give me time till this weekend so that I can have a connect with you and look at what is the issue on the local machine.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
I'll remind you later.
Sure, thank you.